Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, a little more fun with ABS with making a kazoo. Now for those of you that have seen my show before, you know that I have made a kazoo out of wood previously. But today's project is going to be made out of ABS plastic, and it will be quite a bit of a different design from the one I did out of wood. What I wanted to do today in the same kind of theme as testing this plastic and playing around, I wanted to see how it works on the lathe. And I was trying to think of some projects, and I came up with a couple good ones that I think are good ones. But in order to proceed with those, I need to test some things out. And one of those things is how the ABS reacts to working on the lathe. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And what better project than a fun little kazoo. So let's start off by cutting the stock that we're going to need from the block of ABS. Well, the piece that I ended up choosing for the body of our kazoo ended up being 1.25 inches by 1.25 inches by approximately 4 inches long. And because I'm going to be working on the lathe, I just want to mark the center on each end here and give it a little center punch. Easiest way, of course, to do that is just to place a mark corner to corner. So we're going to place our center mark on both ends, and then we're going to head over to the lathe. Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to mount your blank now between centers. And for me, I've got a live center on the tailstock, and I've got a small, I think it's a 1/2 inch stub center on the headstock. Now, I don't know if that's going to be enough pressure to hold the plastic, but we'll sort of play it by ear and see how we do. It's going to be a learning curve no matter how we look at it. So we're going to set up our lathe here, and the first step we're going to do is I want to try to rough turn this to round. And for that, you're going to want your roughing gouge. Well, the next thing that I want to do is to give it some shape, and I think that this will be the end that you have your mouth on, and this will be the end of the exit hole sort of thing. So I think I like to have it a little thicker on this side, but then taper down to a thinner profile here. Now, you don't want to go too thin, because we're going to need to drill holes in this afterwards in order to allow the air to come through, obviously. Now, this stuff here seems to really be reacting well with this roughing gouge. I mean, the big long curls of plastic that are coming off of this are absolutely fantastic. And I got to tell you, it's kind of fun to turn. It's a little different than wood, that's for sure. But let's taper this down now. I might use a variety of chisels, probably get the majority of it down with the roughing gouge, and then possibly go to a skew. I don't know. I'll play it by ear. I'm not a lathe wizard. I'm kind of, well, let's just say I'm a bit of a hack when it comes to the lathe. Either way, let's get this tapered down and see what we can come up with. I have pretty much the shape that I want, and although the finish on this is actually quite acceptable, no sanding required when it's turned with sharp chisels like this, I had an idea and I want to try it. And if it fails, I mean, all I have to do is just return this outer edge. But I know that in woodworking, when you turn something like this, you can use some of the existing shavings of the material and you can hold it on to your project at a higher speed and it'll give it a nice sheen, and that's called burnishing. Now, I just wondered if we could do this on the lathe with a block of the ABS plastic and offcut. What if we were to essentially run it along here carefully, and I'm thinking that any imperfections, the heat between the two would help to soften this here and could potentially straighten out any imperfections. So, experiment time, let's give it a whirl. Okay, so experiment's over, and no, it doesn't work. What it does, in essence, is makes the edge even rougher because it starts to melt and some of the material from the other block adheres to it. So no problem, I'll just re-straighten this out, and maybe we'll try some wet sanding and see how that works. Well, I opted against the wet sanding just for now. I still might try it, I don't know. But for now, this is the dry sanding, and the results are actually quite pleasing. I mean, it's really smooth. It just doesn't have a sheen, and I think the wet sanding might bring that out. Either way, do as you please. If you want to try the wet sanding, you can do that. If you don't want to try that and you want to try something different, then by all means do. After all, it is your project. Okay, well, I changed my mind again because I couldn't just leave this without finding out how it reacted to wet sanding. And I'm using micro abrasive pads here, the kind that you would normally use if you were doing a CA glue finish or polishing CA glue when turning a pen. And I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I'm going to start off with a 1500 grit, and I'm going to work my way all the way up to 12,000. And I've turned the lathe speed way down low because we don't want to create friction. We're keeping this paper nice and lubricated so that it can do its job and cool as it polishes and sands this kazoo body. So I'll come back and see you when I get this finished up here. We'll see how we do. Alright, so it was a good call for the wet sanding. Just a beautiful sheen. I wish that this was touch-o-vision so that you guys can feel how glass smooth this came out. Either way, turned out great, and now we need to move forward by putting the holes in the end. So let's head over to the drill press. Well, I decided not to go with the drill press just in case you at home don't have a drill press. So I thought I would just use a cordless drill in the vise. And what I've got here is I've got a 1/2 inch Forstner bit, and we're just going to drill a little bit of a recess, maybe about 3/4 of an inch deep down through the mouthpiece of the kazoo. Now you want to remember to keep your speeds low when drilling through this because of the melting factor of the ABS. Now, once you get this 1/2 inch hole drilled, you want to take a 3/8 inch hole and drill about 3/4 of the way down through. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn the kazoo upside down, and through the exit hole with a 1/2 inch bit, we're going to drill through until we meet up with the 3/8 hole. Now that you have those holes drilled through the mouthpiece side and the front, and they join through in the middle, you'll want to place a hole down through the body to meet up with these holes. I'm going to go with a 1/2 inch and see how that works for me. You don't want to go too big because you need room on here, well, for our next piece. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Drill your 1/2 inch hole down through your kazoo. So if you followed along, your kazoo should look like this. And what we're going to do now is we need to take it over to the belt sander, and we're going to take off this top section here where we just drilled that 1/2 inch hole. The reason for that is we need a flat surface to mount our next piece of our kazoo on. So let's take this over and flatten it out. Well, what I've done to help out our design is I've printed out a little silhouette of, or a line drawing rather, of a maple leaf on a piece of the ABS that I cut to 1/8 of an inch thick. And I sprayed the back of this printout with some spray adhesive, and I let it tack up for 3 minutes, and now I've just rubbed it down, because what we're going to do is we're going to use this pattern as the actual resonator cap. In making this resonator cap, the first step that we need is to drill a hole through the middle of this. And for that, we're going to take it over to the drill press and drill a 1/2 inch hole down through the middle. And now that that 1/2 inch hole is cut, we'll take it over to the scroll saw and cut this out. Now, when scrolling the ABS, the best method that I have found thus far to prevent it from gluing itself back together is a number 3 bit. This is 1/8 thick. You want a coarser bit that will clear the gullets and that will clear the kerf in the cuttings. As well, you want to take a very low speed. I have this as low as she'll go, and you also want to have a very low feed rate. You want to avoid at all costs heating up the blade, because it will glue your project back together. So that being said, take her slow, and I'll see you when I'm done. Well, we have our maple leaf cut, and what I'm going to do is I've got a little square of a plastic shopping bag, and it's one of those plastic bags that you get at your regular department store when they put your stuff in. If you don't have a plastic bag, you could use wax paper, parchment paper, that sort of thing would work as well. I'm going to cut out a piece that's small enough to fit inside the outer diameter of this maple leaf, but big enough to cover that 1/2 inch hole. And once we get that piece cut, I'm going to put a couple drops of CA glue around the perimeter of that hole and glue down this piece of plastic. I decided to go all the way around the perimeter there just to give good adhesion. Just like that. And we'll let that dry, and once that is set in there, we'll cut off the excess that overhangs the cutout, and then from there, all that's left is to glue your maple leaf with the plastic side down onto your piece that you made earlier, making sure that your 1/2 inch holes line up here in the middle. And now with just a few drops of CA here on the maple leaf, we'll mount it to our project. Just like that. Flip it over, being sure to line up those 1/2 inch holes. And center it on there. Just like that. And we'll let that set up. And there you have it. An ABS Plastics Canadian themed kazoo. Guys, this project was a lot of fun. I have to say, I wasn't quite sure what to expect with turning of the ABS plastic, but I'm actually surprised. With a good sharp chisel, it cuts cleanly, nice curls coming off, no gouging. I did have a couple catches, but that was user error. That was my own fault. It wasn't the fault of the actual product. I like how the contrast is there, and I mean, like I said, this one's Canadian themed, so I have the contrast of the white and the red, but with multiple colors of this plastic, I mean, you're only limited to your imagination. It doesn't have to be Canadian themed. It can be whatever you like. If all you want is just a little round disc on the top to hold that resonator in, then so be it. As far as the resonator goes, if you wanted to, you could drill in countersink screws and screw this top cap on so that that resonator film, the plastic bag, is replaceable if you feel so inclined. As for me, I think this is going to end up to be more of a decorative piece, although it may get played. Who knows? So it does have a loud enough sound, and you can as well play with the different materials for the resonator. If you want to try the wax paper, try the wax paper. Remember that old thing around the comb and you hum into it? Same principle. Try different materials, whether it be plastics, whether it be parchment paper, whether it be wax paper. Try different hole sizes. That will give you more sound. And this one here, not bad. That's not bad, considering, right? Considering how we put it together and how much fun we had doing it, it was worth it. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's show. I hope you've enjoyed this little series on the ABS plastics. I want to thank Omicron Plastics for their constant support as I email them back and forth asking questions about their product. Very helpful people, and I'll place all the links below. Guys, hope to see you next Tuesday for another Alternative Tuesday. If it happens, I'll see you there.